The phone rang just before noon. I had just put the kettle on and was flipping through my old planner when I saw Clara's name flash across the screen. I smiled before I even picked up. "Mom," she burst out. "He proposed Evan asked me last night." My heart leapt. I sat down on the kitchen stool, hand over my chest. "Oh, sweetheart. That's wonderful news." She rattled off the details, how he'd taken her to a vineyard, how the ring sparkled in the candlelight, how she'd cried. I listened, nodding, even though she couldn't see. Already I pictured us at the dining table again, flipping through magazines, swatching fabric, folding paper flowers, the way we used to fold high school brochures. But then her tone shifted. Evan's mom is actually amazing at this stuff. She's already got venue suggestions and a timeline going. You won't have to stress about a thing. Just sign the checks when they come through. I paused. "Oh yeah, you don't have to do anything. Margaret's a pro. She planned his sister's wedding in 6 weeks. It was beautiful." The silence stretched. I looked down at the planner still open beside me. There, under the month of May, I wrote in pen, "Clara's wedding prep start." I had waited years for this. Not for the dress or the flowers, but for the moment Clara and I would be side by side again, choosing joy together. But after that call, the emails never came. No vendor questions, no updates, no lists with my name on them. I checked my inbox twice, then stopped checking at all. Margaret's name, however, started showing up more often on packages addressed to Clara, on cards that mentioned tastings and bookings, on whispered updates from mutual friends who assumed I already knew. Each time it felt like another thread coming loose. By the end of the month I stopped writing in the planner, but I didn't close it. Not yet. Instead, I folded the page corner and left it open on the counter, just in case someone remembered the promise we made. I was watering the porch plants when Mrs. Delaney waved me over from across the street, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. "Look what came," she said, holding up an envelope the color of pressed linen. "Gold wax seal looping script. Whitmore Kessler wedding?" She beamed. "Isn't it just stunning? You must be so proud." I nodded, smile tight. "It's lovely. Can't wait to see you there," she added, tucking the envelope back into her cardigan as if it were a rare jewel. I walked back inside and went straight to the small pile of mail on the entryway table. Gas bill, coupon flyer, a postcard from the library about summer hours. No envelope with my name in script. I checked the kitchen counter, then the box by the door. Nothing. I stood there longer than I should have, then picked up the phone. Clara answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mom. I just saw one of the invitations," I said. "Mrs. Delaney got hers." "Oh yeah. Aren't they pretty?" I echoed. "But there's no mention of me anywhere. It says, hosted by the Whitmore family." There was a pause. Then she said it casually, like it was a small matter. Margaret thought it looked cleaner that way. Too many names made it feel cluttered. "I see. You know you're part of it anyway," she added softer, as if that was meant to reassure me. I didn't respond. I couldn't find the right words to say that being invisible in print feels no different than being invisible in person. "I have to run," she said after a beat. "Cake tasting." When I hung up, my hands were colder than they should have been. I pulled out the box from the hallway closet, the one with her baby photos, the drawing she made of me in kindergarten labeled, "My Mommy." I stared at that crooked little heart she'd drawn beside my name. Somewhere along the line, they had cleaned that name right off the page. And now they wanted my signature instead. The boutique sat on the corner of Rosewell and Fifth, with windows framed in soft tulle and displays lit like a jewelry case. I parked across the street and sat in the car for a moment, staring at the small box in my lap. Inside were the pearl pins. Clara and I had picked out years ago, back when she still believed in hope stitched into fabric. I walked in with quiet steps. The scent inside was 2 sweet roses and something synthetic. A young woman behind the counter looked up surprised. "I'm here for Clara Halbrook's fitting," I said. "Well, soon to be Kessler." She hesitated, then glanced at her tablet. "Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. Mrs. Whitmore requested fittings stay family only." I blinked, confused. "I am family. I'm her mother." The girl bit her lip. "I understand, it's just, I was told not to make exceptions." Somewhere behind her, a curtain rustled. Through a small opening, I caught a glimpse of Clara standing in front of a mirror, arms raised slightly as someone adjusted the bodice of a gown. Margaret stood nearby, laughing, holding up a piece of lace against Clara's shoulder. Their closeness was choreographed, seamless, like they had done this before, like they didn't need me at all. I stepped back. The pins still clutched in my hand. "Just let Clara know I stopped by," I said, my voice low. "She'll understand." Outside, the wind had picked up. I got back in my car and sat there for a long time, the unopened box resting on the passenger seat, like something I'd brought too late. That night, as I folded laundry, my phone buzzed. "Clara, Mom? Please don't take it personally. It's just simpler this way." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, deleted, retyped. 20 drafts of trying to explain how love isn't meant to be streamlined. In the end, I turned the screen off without replying. The room stayed quiet, but the silence wasn't empty. It carried every word I didn't send. And still, the box of pins remained by the door unopened. The email came just after breakfast. Subject line, "Pending disbursements. Whitmore, Kessler event." I nearly deleted it, assuming it was junk. But then I saw the sender, Caroline Pierce, assistant to Mrs. Margaret Whitmore. I clicked it open. There were bulleted lists of vendors' dates and totals. Magnolia Crest Estate. Florals by Arden House. Catering from Savory Table. Every item had a line next to it labeled "Paid by Halbrook Trust." At the bottom, one final sentence stood alone. "Please have Mrs. Kessler authorize final disbursements from the Halbrook Trust by Friday." I read it twice, then once more. They had called me Mrs. Kessler Margaret's name, not mine, and not a single line mentioned me as Clara's mother, just as the one who signs. I printed the email and took it to the living room, placing it beside the photo of my husband. He was smiling in it, wind in his hair, arm wrapped around Clara at age 9. He'd called the trust his final gift before the hospital took him. We'd agreed it would help Clara start a life, not fund someone else's version of it. The phone rang. Clara. "Hey, Mom? Did you get the email from Caroline I did?" "Great. Can you just go ahead and sign off on the payments? Everything's already booked, and Margaret said there's a deposit window." There was a pause, but I didn't fill it. "It's just what Dad left for me," she added, her tone sharper now. "You're just handling the boring part." I nodded to no one. "I see. I'll check in later," she said. "Thanks, Mom." The call ended. I opened the drawer in the hallway and pulled out the legal folder. The original trust documents were still crisp, still signed in my husband's slanted handwriting. Maureen Halbrook, sole trustee. I read it slowly, then closed the folder and placed it on the kitchen table. Outside, the sky had turned gray. Inside, every light in the house felt too bright, too artificial. And the invoice total stared up from the email, waiting for a name that no one had bothered to include in anything else. I wrapped the veil that morning. My own wedding veil, hand-stitched lace, a little worn at the edges, but still delicate. I tied it with a blue ribbon and held it like something sacred. Clara had once tried it on as a child, draping it over her head and asking if she looked like a princess. The rehearsal was set at the old chapel on Easton Hill. I arrived just as the sun began to set, soft light stretching across the stone steps. Music drifted from inside, piano notes and low laughter. A young woman with a clipboard stood near the entrance, her headset tucked behind one ear. "Excuse me," I said gently, holding out the box. I'm here for the Kessler rehearsal. Clara Hallbrook is my daughter. She flipped a page, scanning quickly. Name, Maureen Hallbrook. She looked up, eyes tight with apology. I'm so sorry, ma'am. You're not on the approved guest list. I understand, but I nodded toward the doors. I'm her mother. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Mrs. Whitmore was very specific. No additions tonight. I took a step back, careful not to let the box slip. Through a narrow crack in the door, I saw the edge of a table dressed in ivory linen twinkle lights glowing above. Clara stood near the front, laughing at something Evan said. Margaret stood beside her, hand on Clara's arm, like she belonged there. The moment was warm, golden, picture perfect. I turned away. The drive home was quiet. I didn't cry, not even when I pulled into the garage. I just sat for a while with the ribboned box in my lap. When I walked inside, I placed the veil gently on the entry table and stood beside it, unsure if I was more mother or guest now. The air in the house held its breath around me. I looked toward the hallway, toward the framed photos of birthdays and school plays. My name had always been written on the back of those. But this time, it wasn't even on the list. The morning passed like any other Saturday. I made tea. I folded towels. I watched the sky shift as if waiting for something it couldn't name. There was no knock at the door. No message. No ride. By noon, I stopped pretending. I wasn't going. At 12:17, my niece Hannah texted me. They're starting now. Here's the link. A blue hyperlink followed, pulsing on the screen. I sat down at the kitchen table and clicked it. The live stream opened to soft music and sunlight pouring through stained glass. The pews were full, faces turned toward the aisle. Clara appeared in a soft gold dress, arm hooked through Evan's. Her smile was wide but strained, like something practiced. Front row seats bore small cards in silver script. I paused the video when the camera panned. Mother of the bride. It sat untouched. I stared at it longer than anything else. A nameplate without a name. A chair set aside for someone who never got the address. Margaret stood proudly beside the altar. Her dress matched the flowers. Every gesture timed. She wiped her eyes at the exact moment Clara reached Evan's side. I watched them say their vows. Clara's voice trembled when she said forever. I wondered if she heard mine when I whispered I do decades ago in a dress my mother helped me hem. The screen didn't care. It just kept streaming. There was applause, a swell of music. White petals floated down from somewhere above. I didn't stay for the reception. I closed the laptop slowly, as if shutting a door. The screen went black. I got up, placed the untouched teacup in the sink, and looked around the room that once held every part of her life, from first steps to late-night prom photos. The silence wasn't loud anymore. It was something else now, something final. I turned off the porch light, even though it was still daylight, and walked down the hallway to the old family albums. Not to reminisce, just to remember that once my seat had never needed a label. On Monday morning, the first email came at 8:04 a.m. Final invoice, Hamilton Catering. Due upon receipt. Then another. Reminder remaining balance. Arden House Floral. Late fee pending. By 10 o'clock, there were 7 messages. Each one polite, each one urgent. By noon, the tone had shifted, subject lines now stamped with red payment overdue. Action required. I stared at them for a long while. Then I picked up the phone and called the bank. Coastal First. This is Jamie. How may I assist you? My name is Maureen Hallbrook, I said. I need to cancel every pending check tied to the Hallbrook Wedding Trust. A pause. Then the sound of keys clicking. Every check, ma'am. Yes. May I ask why I didn't raise my voice? I didn't stammer. Because I wasn't invited. She didn't speak for a beat. Then came a soft, professional reply. Understood. I'll make a note of that. By evening, the emails turned frantic. Payment declined. Please confirm account. Urgent balance, outstanding event already completed. And then finally, my phone lit up. Clara. Mom, she snapped. Before I could say hello, Margaret says the vendors are threatening legal action. What did you do? I stopped paying for something I was never a part of. You said Dad left that trust for me. He did, I said quietly. But he also left it in my name. For your future, not your replacement family's party. Her breath caught. I could hear Margaret's voice behind her, low and furious. I can't believe you'd do this now. You had 100 moments to include me, I said. But you didn't. You built a wedding around silence. And now you're hearing it. She didn't answer. The call ended with nothing but static. I closed the email window, shut my laptop, and looked over at the fireplace mantel. The trust folder still rested where I'd left it. My husband's handwriting clear, deliberate, permanent. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't raised a hand. But for once, I'd withheld the one thing they never imagined I'd take back. By the end of the week, the whispers reached every corner of town. At the farmer's market, I felt them trailing behind me, snippets of conversations softened by faux politeness. She canceled the whole thing. Just like that. I heard the venue never got paid. Can you imagine people who once waved across aisles now found sudden interest in their tomatoes? I didn't say anything. I didn't owe them a version of the story they could pass around like produce. On Thursday, a white envelope arrived. Heavy stock. Formal lettering. The sender, Whitmore and Associates. I opened it at the kitchen table, hands steady. The letter was sharp and worded like a slap. We will pursue full recovery of outstanding balances owed for the Whitmore-Halbrook wedding, including vendor penalties and damages incurred. I read it twice. Then I smiled. The trust was sealed under my name, irrevocable, locked with protections my husband and I had agreed on when Clara was 16. He'd been worried, even then. You give too much, he'd said. Make sure you keep something for yourself. I folded the letter neatly, tucked it under a stack of old receipts, and walked outside to the garden. The roses hadn't taken well to the season. Their edges were brown petals curled in on themselves like secrets, too long held. I knelt by the nearest bush and began to trim them one careful cut at a time. The dirt was cool beneath my palms. Grounding. Real. It didn't ask questions. It didn't demand answers. Over the fence, I saw a car slow as it passed my driveway. A neighbor. They didn't wave. I didn't look up. The sun warmed my back as I worked. No script, no performance, no audience. Just soil and silence, neither one asking me to justify a thing. Inside, the kitchen window stood open. A breeze stirred the curtains. I left the lawyer's letter where it was and went back to the roses. Not to save them, but to make space for something new. The rain came late, soft at first, then steady, drumming across the roof like a quiet reckoning. I couldn't sleep. The walls felt tight. My thoughts louder than the storm. I walked to the drawer where I kept old receipts and stationery, pulled out a single sheet of paper, lit a lamp, sat down. At first I wrote slowly. Then the words rushed out. Clara. I didn't need the perfect wedding. I didn't need matching napkins or imported flowers. I just needed a seat in the room where my daughter said forever. I raised you to know the difference between show and meaning, between presentation and presence. And I'm not angry because I wasn't in the pictures. I'm hurt because I wasn't in the moment. I don't hate Margaret. I don't envy her clipboard or her control, but I do pity a woman who mistakes planning for love. I hope one day you look back and remember that I was the first person to teach you what loyalty feels like and what it costs. Love isn't perfect. It's not always polite, but it doesn't erase the people who built it. I miss you. Mom. I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it, sealed it. I told myself I'd throw it out in the morning. Instead, I got in the car and drove. Clara's apartment sat quiet under the fogged streetlights. I didn't ring the bell. I didn't knock. Just slipped the envelope under the door and walked back to my car. No message came the next day. Or the next week. I didn't expect one. I let the silence settle where it belonged. Not as punishment, but as space. Then almost a month later, a cream envelope arrived. My name in Clara's handwriting. Inside, Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't see it until it was already done. I thought keeping things smooth meant keeping things separate. I was wrong. I want to try. I held the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. Not fixed. Not erased. But maybe not over. The first warm day of spring came without warning. The kind of warmth that feels unfamiliar after a long season of cold. I was kneeling in the garden, fingers deep in the soil, cutting back what hadn't survived the frost. The roses had curled into themselves months ago, brown edges, brittle stems, roots that gave up too soon. Then I heard it. A car door. Gravel shifting. I stood wiping my hands on my apron. Clara stood at the gate. No makeup, no jewelry, just a plain cotton dress and eyes rimmed in red. The kind of bear that tells the truth before a word is said. We moved out, she said softly. Evan and I. It was time. I didn't speak. Not yet. She stepped closer, voice breaking just slightly. I miss you, Mom. I walked to the porch, lifted a second pair of gloves from the rail, and held them out. The roses didn't make it through winter, I said. Help me replant. She took the gloves with a nod. We crouched together in the flower bed shoulder to shoulder, clearing what was lost and making space for something new. For a long time, we didn't talk. We just worked, roots in hand, trowels scraping quietly. The breeze carried the scent of damp earth, and something faintly sweet hope, maybe, if that had a smell. She wiped her cheek with the back of her glove. I kept your letter, she whispered. I read it so many times I nearly memorized it. I looked over. There was dirt on her face, a smudge across her chin. She didn't notice. I didn't know how much I'd hurt you, she said. I thought I was doing what people expected. You forgot to expect me, I said quietly. She nodded. Next time she said, voice steady, we plan it together. I didn't answer. I just pressed a new root deeper into the earth, covering it with care. We planted until the sun dipped low. And as the light faded, so did something else, the long, cold distance between us.